Deborah Henson-Conant and Karen Montanaro. And today, Karen is an arts advocate, a mime dancer, and a coach and a teacher. I'm a composer and a performer. I have an online school. And but we both studied creativity with the same teacher, who is Tony Montanaro, who Karen ended up marrying. And so we wanted to talk today about one of the techniques that Tony taught us and that we still use today a lot, right, Karen?
Yes.
Yep. And we've also done a workshop together, Karen and I, called Performance for Musicians. And we use this technique in that situation as well. And it's called rounds. So Karen, do you want to start and kind of make a description of rounds? And we might even kind of show people what it's like.
Yeah. Rounds is like Deborah just said, it's a technique for getting the creative juices flowing so that you can create a piece with a bunch of people, that there's not one person directing it and telling other people what to do, but that everybody has this input into the creative process. I find that this technique is extremely exciting and effective. And over the years, he invented it, 40 years ago. And people use it all over the world now. And they generate unique stuff. So how it works is if you're in a group, say there's a group of 15 people, the 15 people line up as if they're the audience. They make a semicircle around the performing area. One person at a time gets up and goes into the performing space where the 15 people are looking at this one person. And that person just does a move. And it's like that. Okay. That person does a move and sits back down where they had sat before. This is very important, that it goes in sequence. Okay. Then the second person gets up and does a move and goes back. There is no talking, no discussion, and no approval ratings allowed. You're just watching this happen. The reason it starts at such a low level of just doing one move is to relieve a lot of tension that people instinctively have when they start creating. There's so much pressure usually surrounding the creative process that people are all trying to create something unusual, original, a masterpiece. And this just starts loosening up the creative process and getting the juices flowing. Since there is no feedback and no approval, and there's just the power of observation happening, things start loosening up. Once people start being free with their impulses, you can start getting more specific about what that offering happens to be. In the beginning, it's just a move. Then it might be a series of moves. Or I might say, depending on what is happening with the group, if I see people are doing really tentative moves because they're still kind of shy and uncomfortable, I might say, do a fully energized move now. Then, you keep going in rounds. Okay, that's why it's called rounds. One person, one person, one person, one person, one person, then come back again. And slowly over the course of these rounds, you start getting more specific about now do a move that's half-baked. This is the language of the rounds.
Some technical.
What's that?
We may be having a technical problem, in which case, if anyone's, if someone's on the chat, and if you can just let know whether in fact you are, whether it's just disappearing or whether it's on that's happening for you. It'd be great. You can add it in the chat. Would be able to see it here. But Karen, you're talking, you can keep talking about, sorry, I should be on screen with you. Talking about rounds, talking about how, I'm just going to re-say what you said myself, because I've done rounds for years, but listening to you describe it, I have been doing it differently. I really love what you said. Again, remember, yeah, that's how it started. It started as all in a circle. It's important that we come up one at a time. We do them without approval, without even trying to be creative. Warm up of just engaging physically, back down where we were. And then what is, if it's more, if you start, you can start adding more elements in. There's some breaking up. Okay, all right. So we'll just keep going. And of course, as we know, it's not about perfection, but it's about connection. And so long as we can remain connected or get back connected and share this, it's something that is so powerful. And I'd like to actually do it with you, Karen, here in a minute. So do you want to take it away from where you just said, which is if you notice that people are, being tentative or something, you might actually say, take it, do it in an active way. Or you might add like walk across the room or pick something up, right? Am I hearing?
Right. Yeah, it's really up to the person leading it to see what the best way to start helping people deal with their anxiety in the creative process. Sorry, my phone is ringing, but I'm going to ignore it.
It's not me. I'm not calling you.
I know it's not you, but I will call this person back, and I'm so glad they're calling, whoever they are, because I usually feel like nobody calls me. So yeah, to get, I mean, the creative process brings up so much anxiety in adults. It doesn't do that in children at all. I mean, the kids are just, but anyway, so yeah, and I know, Deborah, you've used people walk across or pick something up or do anything. In other words, it's just to get people moving and up on their feet and doing something rather than sitting down thinking about what they should do. This is very, very important in the rounds, is to remove the obstacles to creativity. You are not teaching creativity. We are innately and fundamentally creative. The essence of the work is to remove whatever fears are in the way until who we naturally are starts coming forward. So, a word when he taught this that was very, very important when he started teaching. He called it half-baked.
I'm excited about this because half-baked, for anybody who's been in my academy, half-baked is something that I've taken to be really at the heart of sharing for all the people that I work with, and how essential it is that we be able to share something that is completely half-baked. Would you care to describe what half-baked means?
Yeah, so half-baked is a movement that you do not, you do not try to, there's no story and no pantomime and nothing that the audience would recognize as something they've seen before. It's half-baked. No stories, no pantomimes. Okay? In other words, here's a baked idea. Okay? That's a pantomime. You're taking something, you're eating it, the audience recognizes it, and usually you get a laugh. Okay? That laugh is very misleading because you're gonna think, oh, I just succeeded. I did something that somebody recognizes. No, that is in the way of the creative process. Okay? You want to get beyond stories and pantomime. So a half-baked idea might be something like this. It's something you don't plan while you're sitting there. So those are all half-baked ideas. They're not immediately recognized, but they have a magic to them, because not because of you, the mover or the doer, but because of the people watching you. Tony would always say, this exercise is for the observer, not for the doer, because the natural inclination of the mind is to make sense out of things. So if there is no sense there, the mind starts playing with what it just saw and starts getting ideas, starts getting something that the conscious mind can't grasp or doesn't understand. Tony started off using the expression.
What I'm hearing is the difference between presentation and exploration. That when we're just exploring what is this? I don't need to know, but I'm playing with it. Versus, do you see what I'm doing? Do you get it? Do you get the meaning? There's a difference. One is open to creative. One opens us to creative discovery or experience, and the other is trying to make some kind of point. Am I hearing correctly?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And I think everybody, like, hearing this explanation will have their own, oh, that's what this does, or oh, that's what this does. Like just now listening to you talk about, oh, that's what this does. I thought, what the audience is really seeing is the performer's freedom. They're, whoa.
And what I'm hearing and what you just said is now you're in a conversation with creativity and the audience, because you haven't decided what you're doing and how they should respond to it.
Exactly. Yes, it gets away from the stupid, adulterating, limited thing of socialization. That aspect
not to be judgmental, but since you were judgmental about that, which is great, tell me what you mean. Socialization. What happens in socialization?
We're trying to please other people all the time, and there is a place for that. But we have a neurotic fixation on what other people think of us. And when you do a baked idea and people laugh, you go right into those patterns of trying to please people, trying to get laughs, trying to get a certain response to who you are. And that is so limiting. Who you are is so much deeper, so much higher, so much broader than who you think you are. So just by using these basic tools of the rounds, you get beyond who you think you are and all those half-baked ideas that rise up of who you think you are and what you should accomplish and what you should do and the kind of response you should get from what you do. All of that is out of the way. Just simply going through these very, very simple instructions. Just get up there and do a move and then go back. And in order, so that the more extroverted people don't dominate and the more introverted people don't shrink back and hope that somebody will get up before they have to. No, everybody has to get up and in their own turn and watch. I've noticed that when men, all right, and I know this is a gender generalization, which is
I'm going to be like, anyway, but go on, men.
I know. All right. So this is my observation, because how many people are teaching rounds now? Not many. Every time I'm in a group where a man, and that's all right, I'll say a cis man, right, teaches this round, pretty soon, I mean, right off the bat, they just let anybody get up, and I'm sitting there as a sort of culturally, introverted person, and I'm completely, you know, dominated by people, the extroverted person getting up and doing something, and then another extroverted person gets up, another extroverted person gets up, and the introverted person is out of the flow.
So let's go back and look at that for a minute, since we brought it in. What does cis mean?
It means that you identify with the biology that you're born with.
Oh, okay. All right. So, your observation has been that certain people, whoever they may be, and it doesn't kind of really matter, but that when somebody is bringing an energy into the round, that is the energy of the best person should show the most. Is that what you're kind of saying? That the person with the most extroversion, or the person who has the most to say, should be the one that says the most. Is that the energy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and when that happens, it sounds like what you're saying is that the richness of the community, of what we can learn from each other, is just cut away, because we're not seeing what each and every person is bringing to this.
Yeah, I found that when I taught this,
Mm-hmm.
I could identify with the introvert because I'm an introvert, and I knew by watching other people teach this and watching how the extroverts would just come up out of turn and the introverts would just sit there not participating, that it was very important to keep the sequence going. And so I was very clear about that in the beginning. You get up, you do your move, and you go back to where you were. Don't, in other words, just sit wherever you want, because you're then out of order. And not every person.
Oh, so the order gives the order. Teddy just wrote, asked about competitive energy, and it sounds like what you're doing by framing it in this order is you're taking the competition out of it. And what I'm hearing is, if extroverts are the ones who are up there and introverts are the ones who are not doing it, they are each enabling the other. You know, the extroverts are enabling the introverts to not show up, and the introverts are enabling the extroverts to each kind of be in their territory. And then what the extroverts lose is the opportunity to observe, which is, it sounds like you're saying it's what if Tony is saying, this is for the observer to be able to experience a human. And this goes back to something that Tony said. It doesn't matter how many times he said it, but he said it at least once. He said, what you're doing up there on stage. Wait a minute, I just want to get us back up here, and I don't know where it is because I cannot see. Oh, here we go. He said, what you're doing on stage is just to keep you engaged. What the audience is hungry for is to see a human being being a human being. Does that sound like something you heard him say? And is that part of this, that we're experiencing actually just getting up and being human beings and being able to observe human beings without looking for the story, looking for the joke, looking for how good it is, so that we can completely be with people without judgment?
Yes. And what this does too, if you really insist on each person taking their turn and not jumping up to dominate and compete, or they don't even know they're competing, they just have an impulse and they're used to expressing it. I mean, that's the world loves those people who are free to express. What it does is it levels the playing field, and it really speaks to who each person, each individual is. Each individual is an extrovert and an introvert, but we start identifying more with the extrovert in us or more with the introvert in us. And that interferes with our ability to get on stage and, receive inspiration from the inside and express it outwardly, and to receive inspiration from the outward part and let it get to us inwardly. That's the creative process. There are two wings. I use this metaphor often, that we have a private inner experience and we have a public outer expression. And the bird is us. If our connection to our private inner experience is, suppressed or run over by the need to express ourselves publicly, there needs to be a balance. And rounds are all about, lengthening, strengthening, and balancing these two sides of ourselves: our private inner experience, our public outer expression, and our ability to navigate those two realms, these two halves of ourselves. We don't even, this is the intellectual stuff that I find very exciting.
Well, and I know that I know that I love how you talk about it, which is why I want to have these conversations with you. And I love having them. And they used to always just be in my kitchen. And I always would just feel like, how come I'm the only person who gets to hear this? That's not fair. And I know that when we get together, we're physicalizing it. So for example, I'm not going to, well, I could suggest that we did rounds right now, and we could.
I don't think we need to.
Okay, but let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
If can we do these alone? Is there a way to do rounds alone? Since many of us are alone, or is there a way for us to do it? What do you call it? Virtually, but first alone, and then virtually.
Yeah. One person rounds. You have to be your own observer. And not necessarily looking at yourself from the outside, like staying, watching your body, what it does, but also feeling what you're doing does to you. Another way of doing rounds is just to improvise, because improvisation is half-baked. That's where you're just feeling your crop, your what's going on inside of you, and you're letting it come out. And then, suppose you do like, all right, so this might be a half-baked idea. I'm doing that half-baked idea, right? And all of a sudden, I start feeling something, I start feeling something. It's like the elements of storytelling, maybe. I've heard some other people say, you find a container for what you're doing. All of a sudden I might find, ooh, that reminds me of yellow, or that I'm creating light, I'm creating a sort of self aggrandizing kind of light. All these elements start coming into it, and then you leave it. Don't start getting creative. Don't start making shit up. Do another thing. Keep in the half-baked willingness to just go with that. Go with the unknown, unexplored, unfamiliar parts of yourself, because that's where you live. That's what you know about yourself is about this much compared to who you are. And that's the creative process. The creative process wants to put us in touch with the whole of creation, our own unique part in all of creation. Yeah. Am I getting to
No. I was just like, is she going to keep going? It's like when you're in the woods and you're like, there's an animal there and it's doing something. You just want to be quiet and listen to it. So I want to kind of get a reality check here. So, about half-bakes. So one of the things I do in my school in Hip Harp Academy is that I literally have halfway through or almost through a class, I ask people to create a half-baked project. that will then become a baked project, or it will become their final beginning project. And I'm wondering if I'm using the term incorrectly. The point that I'm asking for them to do is do a bad job. Just do the thing. Just don't try to make it right. Just do what you're. I don't know. Now that we've talked about rounds again, I might say, do the gesture of what you're trying to do. Try to get the feeling of what you imagine. But is that me putting too much intentionality into a half-baked project that someone does?
I think you're the only one who can answer that question. I think one of the reasons you and I worked so well together, I think, is because I came from the physical aspect of the work, and you are working with musicians whose instrument isn't of their bodies,
right?
You know? And
right.
So I found that when I learned so much from working with you and watching and identifying with technique people. I call them technique people because I was a professional ballet dancer and I was a technique person. In other words, I identified with my technique. Technique became a way that I felt good about myself. It became a way to get the affirmation from the larger world of dance, indicating that I was a legitimate, respectable human being. And that really did a number on my psyche. And it absolutely blocked all my channels of self-expression. I only used technique to express myself. When I met Tony, he was the first person, and this is kind of blowing my mind because I had been a successful ballet dancer. He was the first person to tell me I should express myself when I moved. I realized that my success in the dance world had to do with the fact that when my technique was great and I was getting lots of roles and I was making lots of money and I was touring the world and I had, guys wanting to go to bed with me, all these indicators that I was somebody were making me happy, So I would get out on stage and I would be happy, I was expressing myself. I didn't know that this happiness, based on all these extraneous sources, was very, very fragile. And by the time I met Tony, I was drying up. Those sources, this is why The Groundhog Day is my favorite movie, because all these things that I thought, defined me and fed me and made me happy were not there anymore. They had, it's like when you drink one cup of coffee and it makes you all alert. Pretty soon you need two, pretty soon you need three, pretty soon you need, to detox. That was happening to me. Tony said, you should express yourself when you move. Over the years of working with him, learning rounds, learning his approach to improvisation, which is very different from most everybody else's approach to improvisation, I started to remove these false strictures on my most organic, original impulses. The source of my originality. Your originality is the source of your joy. But when that originality starts being too extroverted, you need to have a balance. You need to be able to stand out in order to fit in, and this is where I think the arts and the creative process teach us something you can't learn anywhere else. You can't learn it in politics. You can't learn it in religion. You can't learn it in school. The arts, being the creative process, teach you a law of life, that you can't give up your originality for the sake of fitting in any more than you can give up your connection for the sake of standing out. The deeper you go into yourself, the more you will connect with somebody else. If you find that the deeper you go into yourself, the more you hate somebody else, or the more you identify with being a Democrat rather than a Republican, you're not going toward yourself. You're going through a cultural appropriation of yourself. You're going through patterning, positioning, unconscious, habitual thought processes where you used to get a positive reaffirmation. No, the arts teach you the deeper you go into yourself, the more you will feel sublimely, viscerally, unequivocally connected with all of life. And there's nobody left out in that connection. And you don't need to be an extrovert in order to stand out, because it's a spiritual affirmation. It's a spiritual, you could be outside. Let me explain what I mean. This connection that you can feel without being on stage, without getting a lot of approval, without making a lot of money. After Tony died, I equated that a lot of my strength and a lot of my freedom came through this human being. When he died, I went through an identity crisis because I thought, Tony, you left before I could learn your approach to improvisation. I was really, feeling like I needed this outside source of information in order to manifest who I was. I was in a depressive kind of state, which I hadn't been in until, since I met Tony, I hadn't been in that depressive state. So I thought, oh no, here I go back again. By now, because of Tony, because of the work, my impulses were free, right? I just put on my bathrobe and went outside. Who cares? I went outside in my bathrobe and I said out loud, what is my purpose? I just said it out loud. What is my purpose? What am I supposed to do? Where do I go? What do I do? It was as if two hands took my face like this. Okay, impulse, right? And slammed my face down to the ground. And I saw a little flower. And the flower, it was as if the flower, you can't prove this stuff, but who needs to prove it? The flower said, your job is to notice me. That's all you have to do. That made so much sense. So much a proof of autonomy and connection. My job is to notice these signs of love everywhere. Because in that depth of a sense of connection, I can be a better performer. Because that's what connection is. When you're standing in line at the grocery store, you can practice being on stage just by noticing where you are and how much love is communicating to you. Even the design on a Mars bar package is love. All of a sudden you see the Mars bar package saying, notice me, I taste good. I keep the economy going. Yes, I might put a little bit of fat on your thighs, but you don't have to eat me. Just notice me. Life starts talking to you and things start happening to you because you know that your connection doesn't depend on your competitive relative value. Yes, you do have a competitive relative value because you live in the world. People are always going to say, oh yeah, you're the best, or no, you're the worst, or you didn't do that right, or you got to live with that. I mean, for a brief period of time. It's brief. Don't take it too personally. At the same time, you have an absolute value. And yes, your mom will tell you have an absolute value. Your minister, your priest, the Bible will tell you that. The arts go beyond they court the actual visceral experience of your absolute value. And here's what I've learned about that as an arts advocate, trying to find, the holy grail behind what the arts can do for you. The arts prove that your absolute value is revealed in moments that have an absolute value to you. It does not matter if you're on stage or not. That moment when I saw the flower and the flower communicated to me, my purpose is to notice me, it reinforced my absolute value. My absolute value is revealed in moments that have an absolute value to me. The first time I felt that, and I had been going to the arts, I had been in the art world, for a long time. And I'd had many goosebump experiences. But it wasn't until I saw Tony perform for the first time that, on hindsight, I realized when I saw Tony perform, yes, Tony was a phenomenal performer, but Tony's performance put me in touch with my absolute value, because I felt something inside of myself wake up. And it was because something outside of myself woke it up. But if I think that Tony is more important than what he awakened inside of me, then I'm out of balance. And that's where the arts tend to be misunderstood, because a lot of people are talking about, oh, this is art and this is not art. This is art and this is not art. Who decides what world-class art is? The individual. The individual is the absolutely only authority when it comes to world-class art. Because, again, looking at the two wings, a version of us lives in the world, and a version of the world lives in us. The arts prove that these are two sides of the same coin. So Tony awakened something in me. And that's an important thing to know. And I didn't realize that until I heard this expression. Emily Dickinson wrote, "When I feel physically as if the top of my head were taken off, I know that is poetry." When I heard that the first time, it took the top of my head off. Now, here's a funny thing. I get so excited about that expression. And I tell one of my best, dearest friends who understands me so deeply. And she said, "I don't feel the top of my head coming off." She didn't like that analogy. I thought, oh no, it's not about the analogy. Today, it doesn't matter, but she helped me. Later I said, these moments can be epic. Like the expression today would not be when I feel physically as if the top of my head were taken off. The expression today would be, wow, that blows my mind. It's the same phenomenon, but different expression. Or it doesn't have to be epic. It could be gentle. When I saw Tony, I did not feel the top of my head was taken off. I felt pink champagne bubbles rising up from the middle of my bones. I had never felt my bones do that, and it was pink. It was pink.
I just wanted to pull up, I really love, there's a conversation that's going on also in the chat, which I really love, and a response which is beautiful. Teddy is saying, we live and create in that paradox that is the world. As you were talking about that paradox of being in both places and being both in the world and the world being in us. And what I love, what?
Yes.
Yeah. And what
paradox,
I love.
Yeah, the paradox is one of my favorite words.
Right. Not a contradiction, but the paradox of the two seemingly opposite things being true at once.
And the contradiction, instead of a contradiction, it's an opposition. That's what wings teach us, that the contradiction, the polar opposite pulls, one wing is going in this direction, the other wing is going in that direction. The flight and the success of the birds depends on the fact that they're reaching in opposite directions. They're not doing the same job. So when somebody challenges you, when somebody gets you like this, it's the fact that it's the opportunity to understand yourself better. What that person has done is not threaten you. That person has challenged you to understand your meeting point with that person. And it might be that you get a divorce. It might mean that you can't make friends with this person, but you're not mad at them. You're not at war with that person. You are understanding things better. You're understanding yourself better. There's so many ways that going deeper into yourself will help you understand why you're getting upset. So the person is a catalyst revealing your capacity to get unnerved. Good. Because where is the place you're going to be most inclined to get unnerved is on stage. The person is bringing up your capacity to get unnerved, your capacity to be thrown off your center, thrown off your anchor into the real world that goes right up to the source of your highest goosebumps. You have to understand your enemy in order to understand yourself. I think we're frozen.
Can you hear me?
I can.
No? Okay. I know that we have to come to an end. And I think I was muted for a while, but I love that. The source of your highest goosebumps. And I love, I feel like this is so many more ideas have come out of this, but I feel like you just ended with, which this idea, you said something about you must know your enemy. I feel like, is that what you just said, Karen?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm thinking that may be where we want to start in the next phase of this conversation.
Okay. Cool.
If you like, yeah. And I just want to kind of recap that we started off by talking about a technique, not being locked into technique, but a technique for freedom, the technique of rounds that we both learned from Tony, and how it, and this is in your book as well. Is that right? Your book is, and where can people, Mime spoken here? Is that right?
Yeah, unfortunately it's out of print, but there are a lot of used copies on Amazon.
Okay, great. Okay, so and I have one. So anyway, but it's there, but also it's something that you teach as well, and you teach it in schools, I know. But anyway, we can talk about that another time. Karen, thank you so much for coming. And I always love when you start talking, and it's just so meaningful to me to get to share that with others.
Thank you, Deborah.
And so I look forward to our next conversation and to playing more with rounds.
And thank you for the comments in the chat.
Yeah, it was so fun to have these comments. And so being a conversation.